Vicki Danberg. Vicki has an MBA in finance and management and is the healthcare administrator. She has been a Ward 6 counselor at large since 2004. Her main concerns for next term are housing, good zoning plan, infrastructure upgrades, the environment, and local business health. Second, we have Alan Leibowitz. He is a retired physician and Newton resident for 40 years. He was former president of Southborough Medical Group and board member of Atrius Health and Reliant Medical Group, and the co-founder of GAN Academy. Alan has experience in management, finance, and strategic planning. Alicia Bowman is a city councilor running for her third term. She is a longtime advocate for safer streets, bold action on climate, and addressing the housing crisis. Alicia has an MBA and has lived in Newton for 27 years with her husband, Jeff. So thank you. With that, I will turn it over to Margie.
Right. Thank you so much. Alan, I guess you get the first question. Could you please give us a sense of what your top 3 priorities are for the city and why?
The first thing that I've learned through this campaign is that we have to listen to the residents. I don't think that the leadership in this city, including the present councilors, are doing a good enough job to outreach to the residents when major issues come up and listen to them when we are considering various policies. I've learned this through talking to residents, including community leaders, volunteer community leaders that work on a variety of projects, including the woods, the rivers, the lakes, the playing fields, etc., and going to meetings where I've heard residents being very upset about various policies. Second,
no, your time is up. Did you hear the little tweet?
No, I didn't.
Okay.
Can I just mention the other 2?
No, because we have to stick.
Sorry. Sure.
Vicki.
Sure.
Yes, my 3 topics are funding the schools, infrastructure, and housing. On funding the schools, we have an issue of COVID catch-up. One of the most important things that we can do for a child is to make sure that they are up to date with their fellow students. And I think that we need to pay attention to this. We need to address inequity in the schools, attract and keep school teachers, and address the decline in public school population. On infrastructure, we've got roads and sidewalks. We are halfway through our water sewer stormwater program, but we need to look at bike amenities and bike safety.
Thank you. Alicia?
I have had the same 3 priorities the 4 years I've been on the council: housing, climate, and transportation. We have to support the creation of more housing to address the critical housing crisis, especially more affordable housing, which will require more funding. I was pleased to read about the governor's transfer fee proposal that could be used to fund affordable housing, and Newton has previously supported that. Climate, we need to ensure Newton's able to participate in the 10 Communities Act, which allows us to require full electrification in all new substantially renovated buildings. And we need to move forward on BERTA, which will help us address the reduction of energy use by our largest property owners. And lastly, transportation. I've been a transportation advocate for 20 years. We need to give Newton residents options to get out of their cars and use public transportation. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, let's get to what may be the most challenging topic that is facing us: rezoning and the 2 plans to achieve it. Very briefly, as you know, over the last few years, the administration and the city council have been drafting new higher density zoning to meet 2 goals. First, to fulfill the state's MBTA Communities Act, Newton was mandated to rezone for 8,330 units. Second, in addition to that act, Newton has been working on the Village Center Overlay District. rezoning to invigorate our village centers and maintain capacity for more residential units, emphasizing walkability and reduced vehicle use. As the rezoning proposal has been modified and as the state has changed which units can be counted, local residents have heard proposals ranging from as high as 15,000 new units to as low as 7,300 to 9,300. The fluidity of the numbers has been a challenge. At the Waban Library last week, the counselor who has been at the helm of this lamented that some of these numbers have been used to terrify people, but she also said that the state's formula is flawed. So the question is, and let's start with you this time, Vicki, what are the voters to make of all this? And what number do you have in your head in terms of what the proposal will generate?
Okay, well, first of all, we need to understand that the numbers that come from the state are dramatic overcounts of what would ever be built. It is the 177 community 8330 number is a number that must be allowed, but it has nothing to do with what would ever get built. One thing we need to look at is that if you take out, for example, this number assumes that we've got land with no houses on it. If you remove the houses, the parking, and all the other issues, you come up with probably around 4,000 possible units that could be built.
Thank you. And thank you for being specific. Alicia?
Thank you very much. So, I'd take a big step back and say, I hope that we all agree that there's a housing crisis. The Globe is doing an excellent job with their spotlight reporting on this. We've had an incredibly low production number of houses produced since 1960, and especially since 1987. And this is why the state has required the 177 communities that are serviced by the MBTA to loosen their zoning to allow them a little more housing. Not only are we impacting people's ability to have housing, but we're impacting the ability of the state to meet economic goals. We have many more new jobs than we have new houses. So.
Alan?
Yes, I was at a meeting for Ward 2 at Newton North, and it was clear from the counselors that presented that we are talking about a minimum of 15,000 new units. And it was, and that doesn't include future plans that are on that the council is now considering. And it doesn't include large developments like Riverside or Northland. So we are talking about many thousands of units. And I would say we are not considering the downsides of building that number of units, particularly as it affects the number of cars, the traffic, planning for schools, et cetera, green space, the environment, and we need to consider all of those in the numbers.
Okay, Alicia, you will get to go first this time. And so let's pick up where Alan left off. Some have called for fiscal impact analysis before any rezoning is voted on. That analysis could include infrastructure impact, schools impact, et cetera. To what extent do you agree with that call for an impact analysis? Or would you expect that the impacts of upzoning will be gradual and can be taken care of over time? So, Alicia.
So first, as a member of land use, I've had a front row seat to look at the projects that we have required an impact analysis on, whether it was Riverside or Northland, or even 34 units that are currently being built on Beacon Street and Four Corners. All of these analyses are very conservative in their estimate of improving, increases in income coming to the city, and quite high on expenses. Yet they're all positive. Someone asked me to calculate the impact of a project like Trio, and are surprised that it's bringing in at least $1.5 million to the city every year just in property taxes alone. So I see this as being
You finish your sentence.
financial. I see this type of development coming gradually, but also being financially positive for the city and necessary to our increased growth. Thank you.
Alan, you want to weigh in on? Oh, you already. No, on
I
the
didn't.
requiring the impact analysis before voting on the zoning itself.
Well, unfortunately, we won't have time for that unless there's a way to reverse the final vote, because the final vote will come before the end of the year. And I'm very concerned about that because it will be hard. It will be hard to reverse it. That's why I particularly favor limiting the number to the state requirement of 8330 before we go on to do any more, and noting the impact of those housing and how quickly it's developed before we approve further housing, except the exception is for affordable housing.
Vicky?
Yes, I believe your question included infrastructure also, and
Yes.
the impact on that and schools and other things. We have enough capacity in our infrastructure. We've been working on it now for 10 years out of 20. We're halfway there. And in another 10 years, we will have stopped all of the leakage in the main pipes that we're laying. Schools are declining in population. We desperately need students. We had 17,000 in the 1970s and 80s. We now have 11,500, and we're losing 700. We're losing between 200 and 250 a year, and another 700 to 750 in the next 4 years. On traffic does not come from housing; it comes from commuters.
All right.
Did I hear the bell?
Yeah, you did. And my frantic waving. A major concern is the lack of affordable housing. To what extent would the plans, if passed in their current form, address the need for specifically affordable housing? And Vicky, you get to go first on this one.
The only way that this city or any city is going to get affordable housing is through the Inclusionary Zoning Act, which requires that a certain percentage of any development over 7 units, over 6 units, actually 7 units kicks it in, requires either a pay into or production of affordable units. It's at 20 units, it's at one level, and I think it's 15%, 15.5%, and at 100 units, it's at 20%. So we're going to get 20% affordable units every time we are able to build 20 more or 21 or more units. These units are absolutely necessary. They are the only way we're going to get them. Developers make their money, even small developers, on luxury homes. We have to force the legislation and force developers to do it in larger developments. Thank you.
Alicia?
Oh, thank you. So I agree with that.
You'll get 10 extra seconds too.
Oh, it's okay. So inclusionary zoning, there's a lot of confusion about this. It applies to all development happening today, and it will apply to anything that we rezone under the village centers. And Councilor Danberg is right, is that, it varies by number of units, and it's all based on a, deep economic analysis, and it's actually due for review this coming year. But it is a good way that we do get we get housing, we get actual units created that are deed restricted for a lifetime, and we get cash. For partial units or for units, probably 7 to 9 units, people typically pay us in cash. This money is split between the Affordable Housing Trust and the Newton Housing Authority to be used to maintain the affordable housing that we have. Another way that we can create affordable housing is by making it easier and more predictable to build. We may attract some nonprofit developers to redevelop properties in our village centers. Thank you.
Yes, I don't think that the current approach is adequate. We have many people who are low income who wouldn't even qualify under the guidelines that are being referred to. We need a strategic plan to create a truly affordable housing in the city. We need to assess where that could be, what partnerships and what funds are available, and we need a strategic approach to creating affordable housing. It's not simply enough to just have the inclusionary rules.
Marjorie, may I respond to that?
Yes, quickly, please.
Yeah, so I'm on the Affordable Housing Trust, and the Affordable Housing Trust is working on just that. What we can do to better fund our most deeply affordable, but we need money, and we don't have the money in the current budget to support that. So I think development is critical to supporting affordable housing.
Can I respond to that?
Yes, but let me use that as a jumping off point.
Sure.
Because there's talk nowadays about a real estate transfer tax on homes. Depends on how they're set, but could be on homes in Newton as low as $1 million. Do you favor getting some of that revenue from the real estate transfer tax? And if so, how much of a tax are you willing to impose? Alan?
Well, in general, I would favor that, but I'd have to look at the details. For many people who own even smaller homes that are worth $1 million, they are in fixed incomes. And I think we have to think carefully about how we would do that if we were to consider it. But the point that I wanted to make was that this city, as far as I know, is not making the effort to attract commercial real estate, which pays according to what I've heard, 1.75 the rate of residential. Towns around us are making that kind of effort, and we have fallen behind. We have not devoted the resources, again, to a strategic plan to address attracting commercial real estate.
Vicky, on the real estate transfer tax? Or
Yes, I just signed on to that as a supporter. We obviously would have to shape it and see how it would actually work. I would also say that people on fixed incomes would not be affected by that, Alan, because it's only upon sale of a house that this is kicked in. I would put a 1% tax on off the top of my head. I want to hear what other people might have to say, but I live in another place. I grew up in another place rather that has a 1% tax, and I have paid it, and it goes toward affordable housing. I think that this is certainly something that needs to be looked at and shaped, but I am in favor of the idea.
One final question on this rezoning.
I didn't
I'm
answer
sorry.
the
Go
question
ahead.
on that. Thank you. So thank you. I supported the original resolution from the city supporting a transfer tax. I think that Governor Healy's plan is bold. I have some questions about how it will impact the whole state, but as it impacts Newton, I think it's great. I think it will help residents feel more comfortable when they see the number one complaint we get is developers coming in, tearing down a house and then rebuilding a bigger home. So we'll get a transfer tax on when it's sold, and we'll get a transfer tax after it's redeveloped and sold again. And this money could be put forward to affordable housing. I will also say that we should keep in mind when we're talking about commercial development that when apartment buildings more than 6 units are also commercial. So Trio is a commercial building, and that is paying significantly more taxes than if it were homes. Thank you.
Okay, well, we could go on talking about the rezoning probably for the rest of our time, but I wanted to switch to the whole subject of green spaces, and where are the green spaces, both in your home ward and elsewhere, that are particularly vulnerable to development and need steps to preserve them? Alan, let's start with you this time.
Well, I think the first thing is to preserve the green spaces that we have. And secondly, I think that there need to be modifications in the residential zones under the MBTA, so-called MRTs, to assure that not just a portion of the property is open space, because open space can just be paved over, but that actually a significant portion of the property can be green space. And related to that, the preservation of older trees. We need to look at other areas of the city where we might have options to
Sorry,
preserve
we'll come
space.
back, we will come
Okay.
back to trees. I
Okay,
guarantee
okay,
you that.
thank you.
Alicia, on the.
Yeah, so when I think about our green spaces, I think about places like Cold Spring Park and Crystal Lake and other spaces that need investment. We need investment in removing invasive species, in maintaining the tree canopy and the healthy function of that, and making those spaces more accessible. I'm very proud of the work that was done on Livingston Cove at Cold Spring and at Crystal Lake to make that space more accessible, and to make it to preserve the water quality at Crystal Lake. And I agree with Alan that by keeping our neighborhoods a little more green would be great, and our tree canopy. We just have to be careful about how we do it.
Vicky?
Yes, I am also very much in favor of keeping all of the tree canopy that we can. We need to look at new construction and saving doing everything that we can to save the existing mature trees that we have, because it takes many, many years for a tree to grow. I think we need to look at invasives and make sure that we're not saving invasives. The Norway maples, for example, are all over the place. We need to look at not penalizing, for example, 1 to 2 family homeowners by if they need to add a kitchen or add a bedroom. We need to make sure that we exempt them from the need to pay into a fund or pay a fine.
I'm sorry, we're out of time on that, but I want to ask you, how do you envision the best use of pending development of the property at 528 Boylston? Alicia, why don't you go first this time?
Sure. So I did have the pleasure of meeting with neighbors there, and seeing firsthand what it feels like to stand in the backyard of those properties and look over its current use. And I certainly feel like there is definitely a solution there that is better than the smell of mulch and that feeling of stone dust coming onto you, even when it wasn't open. But I do appreciate that there is concern about, a high-rise development, being there. I was really intrigued by the plan that was put forward for the property behind this. That would have been a series of townhomes for the, off of Dudley Road, as the city was considering that. And so I do wonder if something like that might better fit in with the neighborhood.
Vicky?
Yes, I would also say that I think that the solution to this is not a very large building, but the townhomes would certainly fit into the area. It would add homes for people, and it would certainly be a better fit than some of the things that have been proposed. Right now, what is there is not optimal for any neighborhood, and I think that the neighbors are looking to try and find a solution, as is the city. And I think that a solution can be found.
Alan, have you gone on this?
No. So, I also oppose massive building in that area. And I do think we need to listen to the neighbors to see what they think might be best. But overall, I would agree with Alicia and Vicky in the approach.
Right. How do you all feel about the transportation options currently available in Newton? There are proposals to encourage residents to use public transit, ride bikes, and walk. And they do it by reducing parking requirements and redesigning streets for pedestrians and cyclists. Do you support these measures, or would you pursue a different approach if elected? Alan, go first this time.
Well, I certainly support this approach. Again, my issue, we get back to the zoning or the upzoning and the creation of thousands of units and how that would impact all of these great ideas in terms of pedestrians and people who ride bicycles. I just worry, and again, I think we need to stop at the 8330, and we need to look at the impact of any further housing beyond that, including the impact on the areas that you just mentioned, pedestrians, bicyclists, even drivers, particularly focusing on safety issues.
Alicia.
Thank you. So transportation has been my wheelhouse for many years. So I support giving our residents options. Let's make it easier to walk and bike, and we do that by making the streets safer. We do that by bringing more stores and amenities closer to where people live. I'm strongly supportive of creating more housing so that people can get out their front door and get immediately where they want and need to go. And especially, I think this is especially important as we think about seniors and aging, and many people will live long beyond when it's safe for them to drive. I also think by making it easier to walk and bike, we will make it possible for more people to use public transportation because they will be able to walk and bike to transportation hubs. Thank you.
Vicky?
Could you repeat the question, the final question? I'm not sure I caught it correctly.
Oh, do you support measures that would reduce parking requirements and redesign streets, all as part of an approach to encouraging cycling and walking and taking public transit?
Oh, absolutely. I think that back 30, 40, 50 years ago, we went out of our way in this city and all over the Boston area, all over Massachusetts, in fact, to make it easier to use our cars and get around more easily. We in Newton, in fact, we cut our curbs back so that we could make it easier for cars to get around. I think that it's very important to us to make sure that we continue to redesign our streets so that we can encourage bike use, encourage pedestrians, make it easier and safer for pedestrians and bikers to get around, and discourage the use of cars as much as we can.
Thank you. The city has $40 million in surplus funds. The mayor proposed putting a large amount of that into a new operations booster stabilization fund. The city council turned her down. So can you explain the dispute and what do you think that we should do? And we are going to start off with Vicky.
Start off with me, did you say?
Yes.
Oh, thank you. I voted no on this, to the surprise of many of my colleagues. And the reason that I voted no was that we have a tremendous need in our schools right now, post-COVID, where children have fallen behind. And in fact, a very large percentage of children have not done on their MCAS anywhere near the way they should have. What we need to do is address these needs immediately. We can do it by helping by creating a program, let's say for a couple of years, so that we can get these children back up to snuff. And then we can also look at what is the cost of Lincoln Elliott, because costs have gone up. Once we know that, we'll be able to better understand what we have left and what we have to spend.
Okay, Alicia?
So I would just add on to what we heard from Councilor Danberg is that many of us voted against this proposal because we believe that a little money now and a lot of money later, which was what the mayor's plan was, start out at $500,000 and it ends up it's something I think close to $8 million. Would not meet today's needs. We've had an issue, and we've known we've had an issue since COVID, that we have children that are falling further and further behind. And I could not explain to somebody whose child last year did not do well on MCAS in 7th grade why we're not going to put serious funding in until they're in college. We need to level fund this. We could fund something more like 20 teachers or $2.2 million to schools today and keep that going at 5% and increase over time and still have use of money. Thank you.
Ellen, do you want to weigh in on that?
Well, I would have voted against it as well, actually for the same reason. But in terms of future funding, I think that we have to take our lead from the new superintendent. She is the expert on education. She said her top goal is improving the quality of education. And I think we have to listen to her plan to do that and ask appropriate questions. But ultimately, if that is convincing, and I believe it will, we have to find the funds that will support her in the priorities that she determines that will improve the quality, whether it's hiring new teachers, more assistants, whatever it is. And of course, the teachers right now need the support, all the support that they can get.
This is not unrelated. Instead, this question is the gift that keeps on giving. Is the city adequately funding its OPEB or post-retirement health benefits liability? If not, what would you do differently? And let's broaden that to talk about perhaps 3 things that you might do to put Newton's finances on an even more solid footing. And Alicia, you're due to go first.
Excellent. So I actually think we're in pretty good shape given the priorities that we're willing to fund now. I wish the override had passed. I voted for it and I was a strong supporter of it. I think we'd be in better shape and I expect that we will see another override come forward. But we are on track to fund our pensions first by 3032, which will free up cash that hopefully we'll be able to direct to the city and then also direct to our OPEB. I'm more concerned, and I think the best way we can do to make ourselves more financially stable is by allowing more development. We are held to 2.5% growth of tax levy. And this year we will plus new growth, and we will have our smallest new growth percentage in record in all the time since Prop 2.5 was passed, and that's a critical issue.
Thank you. Alan, do you want to go next?
Sure. I mean, there are elements to fiscal responsibility. And the first one is to look at how we're spending money. We need to look at the budget and our expenditures with a fine-tooth comb to see in what areas we can actually cut or we don't need in the future. The second thing, as we talked about, is increasing revenue. So I do support increased housing, but as I mentioned before, we need to focus on development of commercial space. And as Alicia pointed out, TRIO is paying a lot of money into our coffers. We need to expand that effort and have a strategic plan related to commercial space. And the last thing is, how are we spending our money? Thank you.
I will have to leave that at a rhetorical level right now. Vicki.
I agree with a lot of what has been said. I think that we have a good plan in place. We had a 9.6% increase prior to the pension board reducing it to 6.6, and the mayor has now suggested that we move it to 5% to give more wiggle room in what needs to be funded on a yearly basis. I see some good points to that, but I think that we need to take care of our capital needs and our children's COVID catch-up needs first. Again, we have some flexibility with knowing once we know what Lincoln Elliott is going to cost, but we need to balance the OPEB payment, and we will pay it back by 2032. We need to balance that with current school needs.
Okay, I wanted to ask you if any of you see possible revenue coming by expanding pilots, payments in lieu of taxes from nonprofits. Let's start with you, Vicki.
We have been dealing with this for the 20 years that I've been on the board. We haven't gotten very far with it. Boston College, for example, pays a much higher percentage to the town of Boston because half of the college is in Boston than they pay to us. I think a couple of years ago it was only $100,000, which is a ridiculously low pittance coming from a place like BC, a wealthy school like that. I think that there are certainly possibilities that we can do with pilots, but many of the nonprofits that we have are nonprofits because they are on a shoestring. Religious institutes at all kinds of helpful groups do not have the funding to be able to be squeezed by pilot.
Alan, do you have a thought on this?
Just that it's very hard if the law doesn't allow us to create any kind of leverage to increase funding. I think it's a lot of moral suasion. The larger institutions run as businesses. They are unwilling or to pay more because they have their own budgetary priorities. So I think this is a very difficult area, but we can always try to do better, but it is hard. I agree with you.
Yeah, so I have a different thought on this. I agree with Councillor Danberg. My thought is when we had the sale of Mount Alvernia, and I started thinking and actually learned that in the law today, if schools and golf courses get a similar sort of tax break on property taxes. Golf courses actually are required to give right of first refusal if they go to sell property. And I would like to see something like that included on our other institutions, our educational and religious institutions. Boy, does it, I look at Mount Alvernia and wonder, we could have gotten a great school there. We could have gotten some open space. We would have maintained the woods that are there and might have been better stored for that. Thank you.
I have a comment, if I may.
Very quickly, and then we'll
Yes, Councillor Bowman just hit on a very important point. Right now, our golf courses, of which we have 3 private golf courses and 1 public in the city of Newton, get a 75% tax break. They are among the wealthiest institutions in the city, and they could easily pay more in tax. I am looking into what is called Chapter 61B, which is golf courses and the tax breaks that they get, and whether this 1979 rule can still stand up today.
Alicia,
I would agree. I would agree with that, by the way.
Okay, good. Alicia, do you have a thought on that?
I would just, add to it that I just think that right of first refusal on property, if we've, I'm all for supporting our religious and our educational institutions, but if they're going to have a major property or even a minor property, the city would pay a fair amount, but be given an opportunity to purchase the property first for the benefit of the whole city. Thank you.
Okay, what can Newton councilors do to amp up the pressure on National Grid to speed up and carry out repair of gas leaks that are across the city. And we should start with Alan this time.
I'm afraid I have no solution to that. I'm not as familiar with that issue as I would like to be. And so I would listen to people who have expertise in this area and follow their lead, or at least get their advice about ways in which we can, leverage our situation with National Grid for them to
There's a related
them-
question I can ask you in the remaining time, and that is, do you
sure.
support banning future natural gas hookups?
Yes, I do.
Okay, Alicia?
Okay, so the gas companies have us over a barrel. They're controlled at the state level. Several years ago, a gas system enhancement plan was developed. And if you look at the fine details and the analysis afterwards, it will cost us 4 times the big dig to replace all of our gas infrastructure or leaky gas infrastructure at a time when we're 25 years away from needing to be off natural gas altogether and all fossil fuels. So I think, the plan that we have now is that we need to work with our state legislators to work on a gas system migration plan. We need to migrate off of gas, and the fact that we'd be spending hundreds of millions of dollars every year that goes right back to the ratepayer to put infrastructure in that won't be utilized in 25 years, it seems crazy
Nikki?
and foolish.
I can only add to that. Everything that we've heard is right on target. What we need to do is have a planned abandonment of our gas system, not a relining plan so that we can use it for another 100 years. We've got to get off natural gas. We've got to get off fossil fuels. And the leaks under the street are killing our trees. They are costing us environmental damage that is well documented, and I think that we need to just find a way to every year abandon more and more. We should not allow any more new gas hookups to be done.
Changing the theme again. It's been touched on lightly. How do you plan to further involve residents in the decision-making process? And please be very specific. And Alicia, you are due to go first.
All right. So yeah, I guess, better communication. I as a city councilor work hard to communicate and with residents, respond to their emails, send them regular updates, agree to meet. Anybody can call me anytime. And certainly I think, question we got in the league debate was question about making the website more user friendly so people can get more information. And I think that's one element, but there also is a reason. There's a reason we're elected, and you want to involve residents and get their input on items. But many residents are just living their lives, and they want to trust to know that you're going to make good decisions. If they're unable to be involved in that. So that's it.
Okay, Alan.
Yes, as I mentioned in the beginning, I think one of the real failures is to engage our citizens, our residents in the decision-making process. I wouldn't assume that people are living their lives and therefore don't care and don't care as much because they're just too busy. When I meet residents in their homes, as soon as we start talking, they're very engaged, they're very concerned. We need to do more outreach. We need to move into the neighborhoods, especially if there's a big decision to be made, such as the zoning, when so many people were going to be affected or are going to be affected and haven't been involved or informed as much as they could. Finally, as I said,
All right. Well, you're out of time. I'm sorry. I apologize. Vicki, don't think you've had a chance to weigh in on this.
No, I haven't. we've got our newsletters. Many people have been reaching out. Many more of us counselors have been reaching out on a regular basis. I know I have to all of my the people that I have emails for. The mayor has a newsletter of 35 or it's approaching 40,000 emails now. And this is way better than it was 10 years ago in reaching out to people. We need to do events. Every time we have an opportunity to speak to people, we need to get their opinions. The website needs to be improved because it is right now difficult to navigate and it's hard for the public to find topics. We need to put money into it, talk to people, and take advantage of social media.
Okay,
Thank you.
the following is only looking for a yes or no answer on this whole question of communication. Back in the day, the city used to send out questionnaires to every household to assess the level of satisfaction or dissatisfaction with different aspects of living in Newton. Would you push actively to resurrect that annual questionnaire? And Alicia, you start.
You just said yes. Is that what you want?
Alan?
Yes. Yep.
Yes, with a qualification. So,
Now,
but yes.
Vicky?
Oh, absolutely, yes. I think that that's a wonderful way to reach out to people, and I don't know why we ever stopped it.
Okay, let's move on to where each one of you gets to pose a question to one of your opponents, and we are going to start with Vicky. Whom do you have a question for?
Oh, I think I have a question for Councilor Bowman. Councilor Bowman, you've been a leader on bike stuff since before you got on to the city council. You helped me put the first bike path in, and now you have taken that whole thing and run with it in a wonderful way. What are your plans for the future for bikes, and what other transportation projects do you want to work on?
So I'm very proud of the work that I've done on advocating for safer streets in Newton. You know, for 27 years, really long, you know, as a young parent trying to push a stroller and realizing there were many places where we didn't have sidewalks, and introducing myself to the mayor and suggesting that we should start funding sidewalks just like we fund roads. As a young parent at elementary school, I started Safe Routes to School to promote kids walking and biking to school. And 20 years later, I've seen the outcome of that. We have much safer crosswalks with bolder painting and flashing beacons and curb extensions that make drivers slow down and make pedestrians more visible. We have many more students walking and biking to school today. Makes my heart feel good when I go to the high schools and see 150 bikes. And that's, you know, so plans for the future are more of that.
Alan, whom would you like to put in the hot seat?
I have a question for Vicky. The current percentage of Newton workers who use public transportation is 13%. One of the stated purposes of the proposed dense housing near public transportation is to reduce reliance on cars. Since the percentage is that low now, why would you expect that transportation systems that continuously break down and deliver unreliable service with no realistic expectation of improvements would attract new riders and reduce the number of cars generated by thousands of new housing units?
Well, first of all, I would agree with you that we've got a lot of work to do on our transportation systems. If I were queen and I could take care of that myself, it would be taken care of tomorrow. That not being the case, one of the things that we have learned is that traffic in Newton does not come from housing; it comes from commuters, and the percentage is something like it's over 80% that goes down, for example, Center Street that goes to the Pike. We did an origin and destination study in that, and it showed those numbers. On What was the rest of the question? I'm sorry, I'm getting off on a tangent.
You lost me.
You,
I'm suggesting that with the thousands of new units, there will be literally thousands of new cars. And it's true that a significant percentage of people are coming through the city. But if we do that, there will be thousands of new cars within the city, and people will need to use their cars driving around, including those main thoroughfares that you mentioned. That's my concern.
just in as quickly as I can. The existing multifamily dwelling buildings that we have built are a third to a half empty, because many of the people that are moving in there are empty nesters moving in, going down to one car or no cars, and are able to do all of their necessary purchasing and living activities right around where they live. They prefer to not use a car. So what I'm saying is that when if we build within our villages, we are going to find, I am sure, that people are going to live a lot more car light than we thought they were. And I think that 1.25 or even 1.0 ratio for how many units to how many parking spaces per unit is way too high. I think it's closer to 0.7.
Alicia, I don't think you've posed a question.
I haven't. So my question is for Councillor Danberg. It was good to hear you today talk in such support of moving Newton forward on housing, especially affordable housing. What do you see being your primary new project focusing on in the coming term?
Well, I'm going to continue to work on a pet project of mine, and that is reducing plastics. I chair the plastics reduction working group, and I have the pleasure of working with a number of people from the city. And we have just gotten through on a unanimous vote that I was very proud of, and I think all of us should be very proud of, to reduce a number of single-use plastics in this city. And the next thing I'm going to go for is single-use plastic water bottles, because I think they are polluting our atmosphere. They are ruining our environment and our world. And there is absolutely no need to have all of these plastic bottles in our lives.
Okay, according to the plan, we're supposed to go into closing remarks, but since this issue has been raised very quickly, I'd like to have Alan and Alicia just weigh in on plastic reduction and how you envision that being implemented across the city. How far would you go, Alan?
Well, again, of course, plastics are terrible for our environment, especially single use. So I would support any more aggressive limitations on that. Again, I'm not an expert on this, and I would want to listen to people who are experts and be thoughtful and get feedback from residents and businesses as to how to proceed. But yes, in principle, we need to make a huge effort to do that.
And Alicia, I see you nodding, so do you need to weigh in on this any further?
Sure, I always want a chance to weigh in on things. So Councillor Danberg did an amazing job, her team, in working through those issues with the businesses and with residents who are very passionate about removing plastics. I think I just read that Massachusetts has one of the lowest return rates on plastic bottles because of our low bottle redemption. And so I think it might be a combination of maybe looking back at putting in a deposit on plastic bottles and then moving people forward. I can tell you my own children have told me the importance of reducing plastics, and have got my husband off of drinking out of plastic water bottles for their own health, let alone the health of of our oceans and environment.
Okay, so plastics are out in Newton. We're going to go to closing remarks, and we're going to go in alphabetical order by first name. So Alan, you go first.
In this election, you, the residents of Newton, have a clear choice to support or not support the current zoning plan. This plan will allow the development by right of many thousands of new housing units beyond even the state requirement. That development will transform our city in many negative ways that our current council has not prepared for. More cars, more traffic, inadequate parking, stress on our infrastructure, unpredictable impact on our schools, loss of our local small businesses, and reduced green space and tree canopy. It will not provide truly affordable housing for lower income households. If you have concerns about the direction of the city and want someone who will listen and represent a different approach, then on Tuesday, November 7th or before, vote for me, Alan Lobovitz. Thank you.
Thank you, Alan. Alicia?
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. I'm proud to call Newton home. This is where my husband Jeff grew up and where we've raised our 3 children and where we hope our children will be able to afford to return to raise their own children. But that won't happen unless we build some more housing. And this is where my husband and I plan to live for the rest of our lives. But again, that is dependent on being able to build more housing that will be senior friendly. As council, I've worked with and listened to residents across the city, and we share many of the same priorities for Newton's future: to support seniors and excellent Newton public schools, to take bolder action on the climate and make Newton more resilient to extreme weather, invest in our open spaces in our streets and create our more vibrant and livable village centers, and make Newton more affordable, and preserve history while allowing Newton to modernize and meet the challenges ahead. I'm Alicia Bowman, and I ask for your vote on November 7th.
Finally, Vicky.
Thank you, and I will try and be short. First of all, I want to thank the area councils for hosting this and Marjorie for moderating. Policy makes a big difference in our daily lives. Nothing can be done by one person alone. It's really a counselor's job to be a collaborative problem solver. We have to listen, we have to look at all sides, and we have to search to get what we think is the best solution. The choices that we make will impact our schools, our businesses, and whether we thrive as a community. In 1936, I think it was, Roosevelt said, you need to reform in order to preserve. That's really still true today. So let's be a welcoming community and work together to get there. I ask for your vote on November 7th. Thank you very much.
And thank you. And thank you to all 3 of you candidates for setting aside the time to reflect on these very important issues facing the city. And thanks for your willingness to put yourself forward and run for public office. It's an important service to the community. Thanks also to the area council who planned the logistics for this series of debates, and then they planned again, and then they planned again. And now we are at the end of this 2-day electoral debate marathon. It's been a pleasure to moderate. I've learned a lot, and I thank also the audience for paying attention. So remember, get out and vote on November 7th or do it in advance. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Margie.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.